We're kind of told that we can vote once a year, and that is your civic duty. That and jury duty is what people say is our civic duty. But there's got to be more, because decisions over time are what create our communities.
Well, welcome back, faithful listeners, to In the Meanwhile. I'm Marcus Harrison Green.
And I'm Nora Kenworthy.
You know, Nora, this week has really taught us something important. When a tech baron tells you explicitly, on the record, with his whole entire chest, that he's a sociopathic, unempathetic cretin who cares only about money and power, you should probably believe him.
I feel like I have an entire roster of people that you could be talking about here.
That does not narrow it down. You're correct, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess our old favorite Mark Zuckerberg.
That would be correct, Nora. Anyhow, this trial is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks, where it's 29 different states that have brought a lawsuit against Meta, alleging that the company knew that its social media design was addictive and harming and deleterious to young people, and yet chose to go on about it anyway. So the jury is going to hear from Mark Zuckerberg himself, Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri, and this is the detail I want people to hold, a former Meta employee turned whistleblower named Arturo Bajor, who apparently decided his soul was worth more than his stock options. That is a rare choice that people make these days, I'll tell you.
Finally made that decision.
Yes.
Yeah, this is actually a trial that I have spent some time looking at and have written about.
Yes.
And I think it's going to be really path-breaking. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens here. California's Attorney General Bob Bonta put it very plainly last week. He said, Meta designed a dangerous product for young users, knew it to be dangerous, and then lied to children, families, and the community about how dangerous it was.
Yeah.
Families are fed up, and they have a right to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite frankly, I'm surprised it's taken this long. Meta has been a destructive force for some time. I mean, I know that it has its propaganda agents out there talking about its connection and yada, yada, yada. But I think at this point, I don't know if the juice was ever worth the squeeze when it comes to this company. That's it, because I know you have been following this, Nora. So let me make sure I have this correct. So Meta ran internal research, including a survey of 2,500 teenagers in 2019 that found, and I'm reading directly from their own documents, that young people are acutely aware that Instagram can be bad for their mental health, yet are compelled to spend time on the app for fear of missing out on cultural and social trends. And then Meta deployed the infinite scroll, constant notification alerts, thumbs up likes, and visual filters designed to make children feel worse about themselves, because feeling worse about yourself makes you scroll more.
Yeah. And that's all what we found out in the pretrial filings. So
Yes.
I imagine this is going to be a spicy trial in terms of what comes out. And Meta's response, for the record, is that states are, quote, chasing an outlandish payout, and that their claims are unsubstantiated. They also said, and I want to make sure I'm being accurate here, that the states are penalizing the company for, quote, industry-wide challenges like age verification, which is basically a sentence that translates roughly to, it's kind of hard to do and everyone was breaking the rules. So.
Yes, everyone was doing it legal defense.
Yeah.
I got to say, I mean, that's barely an excuse. It is what a 20-year-old says when their parents find out that somebody was at the Spearmint Rhino instead of studying for their midterms. Okay, that is what people say. I don't know if I don't know personally. I'm just saying that didn't happen to me in my sophomore year of college.
No,
anyway, moving on.
No reference point here whatsoever from
Absolutely not.
actual history. No. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Lawyers are using moves out of the tobacco playbook here.
Yes.
When states sued tobacco companies for designing addictive products, took a long time, but they won. And that resulted in a $200 billion settlement, forced changes to how cigarettes are marketed. Kentucky's Attorney General Russell Coleman said it directly. He said, we did it with tobacco, we did it with opioids, and we'll do it again with Meta.
Yeah. Well, I here is hoping there's some poetic justice and that these damages do reach up to $200 billion because, that is actually Meta's entire annual revenue from last year. So I would hope that maybe there's a judgment that is rendered where basically the judge says every dollar you made by doing this, terrible thing. So the entire business model is what has caused harm. So, you don't get to keep the money and, move on and get this stuff changed.
Yeah. And hopefully it's enough to actually make them hurt enough to change. Although I think
Yes.
it's worth noting that $200 billion is what, like less than 2/3 of Mark's boat. Which
Yes, that is
recently
actually
parked in South Lake Union. Also, I heard, Marcus, that his boat was called upon to help rescue a stranded vessel in Alaska and decided not to respond. So,
What?
I feel like the state
I
should
say
be
what? Of
seizing his
course
boat
not.
anyways. I know.
Of course not.
I know.
We started out with him being a sociopathic, narcissistic, unempathetic person in the opening line. So yes, that is not surprising. Not surprising at all, actually.
He keeps just proving exactly our point. Anyways, this might be a good time to remind listeners to check out our prior conversation with Laura Marquez Garrett on fighting predatory social media in episode 45. Laura
Yes.
is one of the lead plaintiffs in several other cases that have been brought against Meta and successfully been won.
Yes.
So a great conversation for understanding what's happening here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a wonderful precursor if you do not already know. But of course, our faithful listeners are faithful, so I'm sure that they've already listened to it. But
and taken notes.
yes, but good to listen to again. That said, we have got to talk about what's going on with the USS Abraham Lincoln. And I just want to be very clear here. What is happening to the sailors on this ship is absolutely disgraceful. And a response from the people who are supposed to be their leaders and commander-in-chief has been, I don't have a polite word for it, Nora.
Yeah, there isn't one. So I'll use the impolite word here, Marcus. Fucked up.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
The Lincoln is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It left San Diego on November 21st, 2025. It has now been at sea for more than 250 days without a port call. That is a modern record. And the conditions that sailors and their families have been describing, which have been independently confirmed by the Navy Times and the Stars and Stripes, include shortages of supplies, water, and functioning plumbing. Several sailors, as we noted last week, have attempted to jump from the ship.
Jesus, yeah. And I forgot where this was brought up, but they were also saying just the lack of consideration also for some of the sailors who are women who, have needs that are not being, that quite frankly are not being addressed at whatsoever. I mean, it just goes again to the level of inhumanity that we are not only exporting when we when we have these wars, but are like it's literally here, or that we are applying to our own people, including the folks who have voluntarily signed up to quote unquote defend this country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these sailors, to your point, have literally, some of them, I should say, have tried to, like, as you said, try to leap off an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean, and they're basically, I'm not trying to make light of it, but I mean, they're basically saying, they've evaluated the Pacific Ocean and determined it may offer better working conditions than the freaking, aircraft carrier that they're on. I mean, this is literally how bad things have gotten.
Yeah.
And I'm quite frankly surprised this isn't a larger, I hate to say it this way with all the with all the other corruption and everything else that's going on, but I mean, just a much larger sort of political albatross around the neck of the president.
One would think. Yeah. I mean, they literally had a choice between trusting Pete Hegseth's leadership and sharks. And they picked sharks. It's like the ultimate man versus bear, but worse. Yeah. And, when reporters asked the president about this, I think he first said that he didn't really care what was going on.
Right.
And then he said that the ship was, quote, beautifully maintained and beautifully taken care of. And then he said there were other people, unidentified, who verified these accounts of how beautiful it is. And then when a CNN reporter continued asking about it, the president told her, of course, to be quiet and called
Right.
it fake news.
It, you know, I know he's rude to a lot of reporters. It does seem that he has a
There is a
special
pattern. There's a
ire for
pattern.
for reporters who are women. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe don't want to draw conclusions here, but my God. But anyhow, so just to review the evidentiary chain here, Nora. An unnamed retired admiral told the president something over the weekend. Then some unnamed other people apparently checked the unnamed admiral's homework. We cannot talk to any of these people. The press can't. And then we cannot identify any of these people. We do not know what they inspected. But apparently everybody agrees everything is fantastic. Meanwhile, the people actually on the ship and their families are saying, hey, we don't have enough water. The plumbing doesn't work. And people are trying to fucking jump overboard. And the official response is basically, I see your point, but counterpoint, a guy told me it's beautiful. So fuck off. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Well, I mean, at least we can see pictures of his ballroom, Marcus. I mean,
That is
same, right? Yeah. Maybe they can live there when they get back.
Oh, boy.
Like, one of the things that makes this especially disturbing is that family members are now saying they're afraid of retaliation simply for describing what their loved ones are experiencing.
Right.
The sister of one Lincoln crew member, speaking anonymously, said, I grew up in the United States where you have to be very respectful of the military. They're making the ultimate sacrifice in protecting their country. And now you have the commander-in-chief and defense secretary dismissing their experiences and calling them liars. And she said she was really angry, which she should be.
Yeah, no, she should be fucking irate. Like, I know I would be if I had somebody out there. These are people who, again, I mean, you know, I understand the complications of, you know, military service and so forth. We've had, you know, a couple of different veterans on the show to talk about that. That said, you know, these are people who are deployed in a war zone in the Strait of Hormuz in the middle of a conflict with Iran that, quite frankly, has no clear end. And because of our president, who seems to vacillate by the day on what he's even doing there. And so you have these people who have been at sea for more than 250 days without touching land, and there is zero reason for them to be. Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I would just want to connect this to something we've talked about a lot on this show before, which is the question of who gets the benefit of the doubt and whose experiences are treated as credible, because these service members and their families are being gaslit in real time. And, you know, while all of this is happening, these sailors are stuck at sea. So I genuinely do not know what support the troops means if it does not include believing troops when they tell you that they are suffering and they're sending photos to their family members of what they're experiencing.
I gotta say, Nora, and I don't mean this flippantly, but like, I remember when it used to be like believe women, and that was the thing we were fighting for, and now it's like things have gotten so bad, right? It's like believe troops, though, like the one area that there was supposedly just like, you know, unquestioned sort of reverence for in this country, and here we are. So this is where things are, 2026, folks. Okay, welcome to that. Anyway, well, on to Jesus, from one heavy story to another.
We have a full tank today, Marcus.
Yes, but I promise you, the conversation we're having, our main conversation, it provides a lot of hope, folks. So, you know, just no worries at all.
And cookies.
Yes, that is well. But Nora, if I know this, I know even though this is over in the United Kingdom, it obviously doesn't involve academia. So if you want to kick us off on this particular story.
Yeah, this one really hurts. I've just been sitting with the weight of it all week. So Jason Arday died last Friday. He was 41 years old, the youngest Black professor ever appointed at Cambridge University, obviously one of the oldest, most prestigious academic institutions in the world. 30,000 people gathered to mourn him. MPs, friends, campaigners, his students, and the people whose lives he changed.
Yeah, he had just resigned from his position at Cambridge after weeks of intense media scrutiny over allegations of plagiarism, which, for the record, he did reject. We do not know with certainty the circumstances of his death as of, you know, when we're taping the show, and so we're not going to speculate. But what we do know is what his family said in their statement. And the statement read, "The public cruelty Jason was subjected to was too much for any man to bear."
Yeah. And his family also said, and I want to make sure that I read this right, although it is bittersweet now, kindness is needed in life, not just in death. This is from the people who knew him best, and that's what they chose
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, and I hope people I've been sitting with that too, right? And I hope other people sit with that, right? Um, and I think that's why this needs to be said too, because this does appear to be a very clear pattern. You had Claudine Gay, who became the first Black
Mhm.
female president of Harvard. So, after almost 4 centuries of that institution's history, and she lasted all of 6 months, right? And the controversy started with a congressional testimony. Then suddenly there was enormous interest in her academic work. Then came plagiarism allegations that piled up, and then she resigned, right? And when you look what happened with Jason, it was a very similar situation, right? He got appointed at Cambridge, and then came intense scrutiny, then allegations, and then 249 media articles in 3 weeks, Nora, as if
Yeah.
there's not anything else that is going on in this world, that,
Yeah.
this has to be such, under such like media attention and focus.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
much of it just like overwhelmingly hateful, right? This was
yeah,
not objective like coverage at all.
no,
And I want to name something here because it matters, I think. Regardless of what ultimately took his life, like this was a digital lynching in many ways. He was
yes,
hounded and hunted by the media. Um, Plagiarism is always serious, but plenty of white scholars have not lost their careers, let alone their lives over it, right?
yeah, and there's a ton of, to your point, I mean, there's a ton of social media posts like that lists
Yeah.
several people, like that. The list is the
I mean,
list is longer than we can actually say.
Marcus, there are people in the Epstein files in academia who still have their jobs, right? Like, let's just set aside plagiarism.
Yes, that too, right? I mean, to your point, there's plagiarism is serious, sure, but there are other things a little higher on the
Yeah.
list, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just seems that again, like if what happens when this is sort of a case of what happens when a Black person rises, quote unquote, too quickly into a space where some people have decided they don't belong. And suddenly everything, becomes that much more fascinating and that much more sort of worthy of, of skepticism. And then there's, all these concerns all of a sudden about standards and merit and whether the work holds up under scrutiny. And like, I'm a journalist, so of course I don't take issue with scrutiny. I do take issue with asymmetric scrutiny, right? That, scrutiny that was never applied with the same intensity to everyone else in the building.
Yeah. It just so happens that this scrutiny was led by people who are like avowed racists in like British academia. So I don't know, maybe correlation isn't causation, right, Marcus? But no, I mean, and people have said that, Jason Arday must have felt that if he resigned, that the attacks would stop. But in fact, after he resigned, they got even worse.
Right.
His mentor, Simon Woolley, said that when he saw Jason shortly before his death, he said, "We knew Jason was suffering. We told him he was loved."
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's no way around it, Nora. It's just a terrible, terrible situation, and the lack of proportion, right, to to this, even and to the point, like even if it, and again, I just want to be clear, he rejected that he had plagiarized. That said, even had he done so, did it need to get to this level that there's almost 250 stories in 3 weeks about, this one human being who is like, is a professor. Yes, he's a professor at Cambridge, but it's not the president of the United States or an elected official or anything else, right? I mean, I don't know, man.
I mean, we have a certain president who's definitely done worse things.
Yeah, just today. No, I mean, my God, just today. But that's it.
I want to end this on like a slightly better note, which is, that his students and the ones he mentored, the ones he brought through, the ones who started and got their PhDs because of him, those students said, He did not inspire one or two people to do a PhD. There are dozens of us over generations who have dreamed and are now doctors and soon to be professors because of him. And that is his legacy. And I think it's important for us to hold on to that piece of who he was,
Absolutely.
not just the narrative awfulness that consumed him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this. I hope that there is, I don't know that there never is after these things, but like, I hope there is some level of reckoning in media. And I know that's a broad brush because all media isn't, the same, but like for those who are more reputable, quote unquote, institutions, I do hope that there's maybe a pause of and some level of learning, from this.
Yeah, because this kind of pile-on and double standards happens all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, just going to say, including in Seattle in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that is that's another script for another episode, Nora.
Yeah.
But yes. Anyhow. But turning to today, folks, one of the things that drives the show, and I think drives both of us, is the conviction that diagnosing the problem is only half the work. The other half, the harder half, honestly, is finding the people who are actually building something different in this world.
Yes, which is why we are so genuinely thrilled to introduce today's guest. Evan Weissman founded Warm Cookies of the Revolution in Denver, Colorado in 2012. It is what he calls a civic health club. It has engaged over 1 million participants. It uses circus performers, lowrider car clubs, lucha libre wrestlers, mock trials, sports bar halftime conversations, and board books, not for babies, but for the adults who are reading to those babies, to get regular people meaningfully involved in the decisions that shape their communities.
Yeah, Evan is a longtime playwright, director, and theater artist who looked at the tools of his trade and asked, what if we use all of this not to put on a show, but to actually change something? The answer has been tax day carnivals that fill rooms with people who have never thought about municipal budgets before. It has been a participatory budgeting installation, a 2-story garage full of Hot Wheels tracks that helped convince the city of Denver to adopt participatory budgeting citywide. It has been civic house parties run by refugee women in the suburbs of Denver that are, by Evan's own description, some of the most remarkable community organizing he's witnessed.
Evan, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear about what you've been doing in Denver.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm really excited.
Well, we were really excited to find your organization, Warm Cookies of the Revolution. I understand you established it in 2012 as a social club and a civic health club in Denver after many years as a playwright, director, designer, and actor. So tell us what led you to build this social club and maybe trade theater for civic health.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. One thing is and this connects to the sports, is I really wanted to win. Like, I want regular humans to win. I don't want the same people getting screwed over and over and over. And so what winning looked like in my mind, and especially when I talk with other people, was getting more people who are not typically involved, civic decision makers or whatever, for whatever reasons, because they've been ignored, silenced, marginalized, they are apathetic. It could be any of those. And the way that it seemed to make sense to do that was recognizing at our theater, I took it very seriously that people would come and pay money for a ticket, get a babysitter, go out for a meal. That was a big burden. Like, this, we better make something good. And so same thing with Warm Cookies was like, people do not have a lot of time or money, and they're going to spend it on what they have to, and then whatever it is they dig. And so anyways, this is a long answer, but the organizing sort of principle was just, let's do the things that people like doing, whether that's comedy or working on cars or knitting or music or whatever it is. And that tends to be a joyous thing too, that the fear-based everything's bad and you need to get involved doesn't seem to work. So I'll stop there, but that was the underneath for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll say as grudging Seattle Seahawks fans, we sort of feel your pain about having to make peace with the NFL at times, and we
Yeah,
will, as you are a guest, we will not bring up Super Bowl 48 and the result of that. But
very nice
anyway,
of you. It's kind of you, Marcus.
no, no, but if you can you talk a little bit more about the ins and outs and of what Warm Cookies of the Revolution actually does, and what your purpose is, and how you have achieved that through some of your ongoing events?
Yeah. So the goal, so we call it a civic health club. You go to a gym. If you're doing it, you want to look better, you want to feel better, you want to see results. And where do you do that in your community for your civic life? First off, what the hell does civic mean? You maybe took a class maybe in school, and so you kind of know it has something to do with voting and government, right? And so what does civic mean? Let's start there. And so we kind of start with this place of like, do you feel like you own your community? Do you own it the way that you own your purse or your bicycle? Do you own the streets and the school and the jail that way? Then, did you know that? Have you been taught that? Were you taught that? Is it easy for you to show up in those kind of spaces? So that's kind of like the civic part. And then, but where is it? Because we're kind of told that we can vote once a year, and that is your civic duty. That and jury duty is what people say is our civic duty. But there's got to be more, because decisions over time are what create our communities. And I always ask people to, ask themselves, when you walk around your community and you see like how well maintained are the sidewalks and the buildings, what kind of food do you have access to? What kind of jobs are nearby? Do you feel safe? Do people look like you in your neighborhood? These kinds of things are a product of decisions made over time. They weren't done by a vote. So Civic Health Club, how do we get involved in that stuff? And so then the way that we do it is we use arts and culture, anything surprising, fun, weird, something like a subculture, like a thing. If you nerd out with a few other people, cool, let's do that thing. And we approach usually boring topics, but meaningful topics like taxes, even, or code, building code, that kind of thing. We'll attack that from kind of left field, but then we also will go to deeper stuff like, obedience, friendship, loneliness, forgiveness. So we're all over the board in that way. But the way we do it is like we mentioned sports. We got this thing called the huddle. We meet in sports bars and talk at halftime. Sunday School for Atheists talks about, it's exactly what it sounds like. So we meet and we talk about these issues I just talked about. The People Versus is a mock trial where we put on trial things that would never go on trial otherwise. So we have like close to 50 of those events. And then last thing I'll say on this is it's morphed. So it started with these one-off events, and then it became kind of, a thing a month. And then it became, we do installations, and then we made these books and then videos, and we also branched out. So a lot of our work is in the working class suburbs, and then a lot of it's in rural areas. So it's been kind of naturally occurring in that way, and it looks different depending on who's running it, what neighborhood, what town, what's needed.
Let me take that in a slightly similar direction, because we were just speaking actually with Senator Chris Murphy, who has a fairly recent book out about sort of the loss of civic organizational culture in the US, and how a lot of us now sort of see a lot of belonging to, political movements, but those political movements can be really toxic sort of places to belong to. And I think he's talking about this sort of loss of third space. I think one of the special things about what you're doing is that you're not taking politics out of the equation, but you're saying, no, you belong to this broader civic thing, right? That we all create, that isn't just a Maha rally or something. Does that make sense? I think I kind of get that sense from what you're trying to build.
I think that is true. Like I think part of when you ask, like, why did I start it? It only feels good for so long to like feel like you're right. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like all the activism stuff that I was doing with a lot of people who I love and care about and do work that I think is necessary. Like I think we're right. I think we're on the right side of history. I think we're doing the right thing. But it doesn't mean it's working, and it doesn't mean it's I think that's it. It doesn't mean it's working. And so I think that politics does that. I think generally. And when I think of history and I think of, well, what has worked for the expansion of democracy, we'll call it, to include more people in this river experiment of democracy, this idea from, you know, go as far back as you want, go to any kind of period of history, abolition of slavery and child labor laws and environmental laws and women's right to vote and disability rights, civil rights, like just however we've expanded it. It has the last people and groups that get onto that stuff are political parties in power. Mm-hmm. And I think that like culture starts at first and then it builds to people. Groups of people are kind of experimenting with it. And then usually like a third party or some kind of community group drafts legislation. And then it's co-opted into a larger party. And then there's the political process, which is extremely important. But that's not where I want to spend my time, where I think I would be good. And actually what I think is helpful right now. So to your question, you know, it's this weird thing where my politics has always been like, you wear your politics, you say it, you don't back away from it. But the work that we do at Warm Cookies, it's not like, oh, we're not political. Oh no, we don't have a bias. It's not that. It's just, we want people to have power. So in your neighborhood, that's good. I hope that looks different than in your neighborhood, but everyone should have power. I don't think that that's backing out of the political process. I think just we're getting in at it at a different place. And to be honest, most of what we're doing is we are working with people who have not had power. And so, it just, that's where our concern is, because it's like, what the hell else? What else would you do? Like if people who have power and know how to use it, like that's not who I want to be. It's not who I want to work with, though some people do. And there's a reason for that. I get it, but
right.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Evan, because as I'm sure you know, the liberal arts gets just pummeled when it comes to education at times, right? And I'm not just saying that as somebody who went to a liberal arts school, right? But and so I want to ask you though, obviously you have a background in theater, and so I want to ask you, how did you use that, and what did that teach you about bringing people together and building civic engagement, and what, quite frankly, what unexpected lessons have you drawn on in your work in civic health?
So the theater thing was like, I learned so much from, and we have a theater company that's a small group of us, and we make all our own stuff. So when I say that, I don't mean it in the traditional sense of like going out to auditions and being an actor or something. We were making stuff together, and we were lucky enough that Denver, whatever, the timing was right in Denver, and we were able to make that like our job. So I learned so much by doing that about obstacles and creativity and getting how you use your creativity. We when making shows had obstacles that we already had, like we were in our theater, but we sometimes would even make ourselves have other ones. We're like, this show has to be able to fit in the back of a car because we want to travel it around. That's a beautiful creative challenge. It doesn't mean you can't not make it rain, or you can't have a giant puppet that's 20 feet. You just have to figure out how to get around it. And so that artistic process means everything when I was thinking about like making change, making a more just world, because those challenges already exist. Your budget gets cut a new law changes, your leader gets thrown in jail. I mean, you just go wherever it is. It's going to happen. So, and then obviously there's the structural barriers that are already put in place for people. So, I think that's one. The second thing might be that the sort of muscle of creativity, and the we weren't just putting a show on for ourselves. We're making a show and inviting you for like the reason I was saying before, like come spend money on this. There's a respect of people's time and a respect of like their intellect and their emotional intellect. Like we're going to make this, we're not going to talk down to you. We're not going to make something stupid. And I think that's the same process for warm cookies is we're saying, look, come to this thing. It's going to be fun. It's like with people you know or you don't know. It's doing this interesting thing. And we're coming at it from a weird ass angle. But like, trust us because we trust you. And this stuff is important because we know you care. So I think those are probably the two things. I think your last bit was like, are there any surprising civic lessons, did you say?
Yeah, that you've learned from this experience.
I think one thing it's not surprising, but it's maybe surprising that I had to relearn it and continually relearn it, which is power works like water. Like it's going to find the easiest way down. And if, it's like, people say money can't solve everything, but for the things that money can solve, that's a hell of a great thing if you have it, like I can't make my daughter feel happy when a kid teases her, but if I could pay some money, that would be amazing. So I think the civic lesson is like power always goes this kind of easiest route, and it never stops. And we can learn a lot from that as residents, as citizens. And we shouldn't be afraid of power. It exists and you have to use it. But it does not need to look like the way that power has been used by many other people throughout time. But it is there, and it's going to keep showing up.
Yeah. I love the approach of your organization of both promising fun and snacks. Like, I think that's a really effective combination for drawing people in. Um, I I noticed that you've recently run events like I think you had a post-election dance party to help people process the aftermath of the election, and a luchadero carnival for educating people about taxes. I guess I'm wondering, like, in this moment in time when so much is so heavy and people also really want joy, like how do you simultaneously make room for joy and celebration while also like carrying the heaviness of how things like immigration policy are impacting our communities right now?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It is a delicate balance. And people get it too. Like, I don't know of a culture that has survived for a long time in the midst of a lot of oppression or just kind of shitty things happening, that doesn't like have that kind of joy and hopefulness somewhere in it, usually like right up front. Because I think like a balloon needs to let out a little bit of air, or maybe our bodies need to let out like a fart, if you're too big. And I think that like if you've eaten too much. So I think it's both things. Like we put a lot of time into thinking about that stuff. And I think people are yearning for an excuse. Now, again, who is the audience? So when we first we've done the post-election dance party a few times. The idea behind it is that like there is a lot of work to be done regardless of who wins this election that's coming up in 2 months or whatever the time is. So let's party afterwards, and then we have a lot of work to do. We have commitment cards, postcards that we have people say like, what do I commit to doing in the next however long you want? And then we mail it to them a few months later. So there's things when they're there that we incorporate. But I'll say this, that when we first did it, it was 2016 election, and this was in Denver. Denver's, like Seattle. It's like most everyone's some kind of moderate to liberal Democrat, and everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. And so when Trump won, so many people, I shouldn't say so many, but a few loud people were like, how can you have a party right now? Like, how dare you, sort of. But that's always going to be the case. And people loved it. And people get it too. The tax day carnival is a good one, I think, for the question you're asking, which is taxes are, tax day is the national day of mourning. It is the worst day. It's like tax day and getting jury duty again. It's like, that's when people get pissed. And, but so when you think deeply about it, you're like, all right, well, it is how we pay for stuff that we say we care about, or someone says they care about. So it should be a carnival. It should be a celebration. Now, you can celebrate that you don't pay a lot. You can celebrate that you wish everything were privatized, or you can celebrate that you're, proud to pay, or you can celebrate that you resist taxes, whatever. But like, cool, let's come in and talk about it. And so what we do, this is the balance, getting to your question of the balance, is it's a carnival. Like that, most stuff that we do, that's how we promote it. We don't promote like, come to a conversation about taxes, there'll be some carnival performers. No, it's the opposite. Come to this carnival, and there's going to be this tax little business. But so we get all the nerds there from different organizations, and we work with them to make carnival games so that they are not tabling and feel like a Post-it note on this idea. They're integrated into it. And it's great, and people get it, and people love it. People love to learn something. I think that goes back to, like, Marcus, your question, that surprise is like, everyone cares about the air they breathe and their kids' schools.
Right.
Everyone does. And so they're like, if you can connect, if you can get someone to come out, the other part's easy. It's the opposite way that people do it, where they're like, come to a community conversation on the impact of blah, 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 blah. Like, that is when you're going to get the exact same people out. And
right.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I will tell you. Now I do want to talk. I do want to mention, because so often people, particularly on the left, they we say that art matters, and it absolutely does. But I think you gave folks a very concrete example with an installation called "This Machine Has a Soul." And it was essentially a 2-year participatory budgeting project that actually helped convince the city of Denver to adopt participatory budgeting citywide. Can you walk us through how that art installation actually turned into a policy change?
Yeah, totally. And this is the one that's like, we don't often push for things. We're about like, hey, come together, learn about this thing, and then go with this group. They work really hard on immigration or taxes or whatever the thing is. But this one, we had residents. There was I'll try to do it as briefly as possible. There was a crew of women. These were 5 Black women who did a statewide cohort about what they called the built environment, which was basically like what's around you, like your neighborhood. And they were the only group of color in this whole statewide thing. And they had a whole bunch of epiphanies, but one of which was essentially they landed on, they wanted to do participatory budgeting. And we had done some stuff on participatory budgeting before, and a couple of them knew about it. So they sort of led it. They led the start of it, of like, we want to do this. And so how the art gets in there, this is kind of the part of your question, is that then is, we were like, well, how do we win? The mayor did not like it. City council, no one on city council wanted it. And then after a little bit, we got like 1 or 2. But so it was this uphill battle. And so we figured, all right, we need to get residents to even know what the hell this boring sounding thing is. That's one. Number 2 is city staff seem to be the kind of key, because a lot of them feel like this is going to take their power away. And so we need to train them. And then the third thing was we need to get publicity, because again, like if you can get more people and culture around it, it's done. It's a done deal. So for part one, the art was we built these machines. And the first one was it was in a suitcase, and it was a Rube Goldberg machine. You know those, like where the chicken lays the egg and the egg hits the dominoes and the dominoes do that. So it was in there. People would get together and they were invited by their neighbors. Come to this thing. It's on Saturday. We took care of all the accessibility stuff we could. So there's childcare, there's interpretation, there was food, and we got a grant from this thing called Art Place America that gave us a ton of money for us, but very small amount for these processes. But anyway, so they were invited to come to this thing, and then before we said participatory budgeting, before we got into any nerdy stuff, we had this machine and we gave them a coin and we said, here, talk. This is $1 million, this coin. How do you want to spend it? And so they would talk and then say, okay, we want to fix the sidewalks, whatever. Okay, great. Put it in the machine. They put it in the machine and it does the stuff. And then the last thing was a printout on a piece of paper, and we could make it say whatever. So normally we would have City of Denver letterhead, and then it would say, thank you for your comments and concerns. And we'd hand the piece of paper to them. And everyone got it, because everyone had been asked to be at some kind of meeting where they're asked to put sticky notes somewhere. And then they're like, I don't know what the hell happened. So we're like, this is how the system works now. Who knows what happens? And then we brought this other steamer trunk out, which represented participatory budgeting. It was fun. They got to decide what they did. They needed expert help. You couldn't do it alone. It was like two locks that needed to be turned at the same time. You needed multiple people. So we showed them these two things, and then we were like, this is the system that we're talking about. So now they had the thing to talk about the old system, the thing to talk about the new system, and now we could do this training of what it was. So that was number one. These other two are much faster. Number two, training city staff. That's what we did. We did the same thing with them. We talked with them. We brought in some experts. We just did a little bit of like one-on-one stuff to let them know, hey, in other cities that have done it, this is what's helpful, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third thing was we built this installation, which was crazy. So it was this 2-story garage. And in the neighborhood where this garage is, a lot of the residents were, at the time, were trying to stop Interstate I-70 that goes across the country. There was going to be all this work they were going to put underground. And I don't have time to get into the whole thing, but this is a community that's been screwed over many, many times. It's a beautiful community. They're all sorts of rich stuff in the community, but not money wise. And so to connect with people there, we built Hot Wheels tracks that went all throughout this 2-story garage. So it's like a person's house, but in the fridge, there's Hot Wheels coming through the walls. Like that is what is happening. So people immediately could understand. And then we had, like, in a closet, we had videos of all the people. There was a lot to it, but the point is it was weird and it was big and it was cool. So getting media attention for it was not hard. So then more people found out what it was about. It still took multiple years. And I'm probably the loudest critic about how participatory budgeting works in Denver now. But the one thing that it is good at is the community engagement. They hired on a lot of our community people. So it's massively overrepresentative of, like, folks, they go into the jails, they vote, kids vote, undocumented folks vote. So that part of it is good. The amount of money and the way it's dispersed is silly. But anyways, that's a super long answer. But I do think it shows, like, you can approach a boring thing like participatory budgeting, and you can approach a regular way that you would do it. You could do it in a totally different way.
Absolutely. That's art in action.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I very much appreciate the long answer as someone who is a fellow nerd for participatory budgeting.
Okay, good.
Well, I think that this is definitely an example of how you see, human connection and the fact that it isn't microwavable. It does take time, which is actually which leads me to this next question. Because you have grown from what was once, a very scrappy Denver-based project into something that is nationally recognized now, and I can imagine listeners, the light bulbs going off in their head now about how should I go about attempting to potentially borrow this model or approach in my own city. And so I want to ask you, what do people most often get wrong when they try to copy the civic health club idea into their own city, and what things should they look out for?
So I mean, I don't know, other than what I do know is, okay, very quickly, right when we started, we got a fair amount of press. Locally, we got press because I was leaving my theater, and in the small little like Denver theater world, it was like, whoa, it was big news. But we got press. The name is, it stands out. It's kind of cute. So people early on found out about what we were doing, and I think our programs, they look fun, and so people asked pretty quickly, like many years ago, decade ago, this is cool. Can you come here? Can we do it here? And I was like, this is not Chipotle. I do not know how to do that. Try it out. Good luck. Like, I don't know. And that has never been very helpful. So what I did, more direct, answer to your question is I think in theory, anyone could do it. I think in practice, having something, whether that be a space, having a collective of people, having an organization, some backbone, some structure, I think will make it a hell of a lot easier. Because if you're just one person, you just have to have like a certain personality type and certain types of connections. So that's one thing that I think is necessary. I think that this is what we're working on right now. So right now we are creating a cookbook. Like, think of a pretty looking cookbook that you'd see at a store. That is what we're making. It is of our recipes. Because like I said, we have almost 50 of them. This won't be all of them, but like the most replicable. And that is what we're trying to tease out right now. So there are people in other parts of the country who are starting to try some stuff because we're giving them these recipes. In Colorado, there's like Rocky Mountain PBS and then the Denver Public Library. They are starting to run some of our programs. And so I'll know more soon about like what were the challenges, because we're doing a thing where like, here's the design. And then here, like we just typed up this recipe, like, I don't know, does it work or not? So it's a bit of an experiment. And then this book, there'll be an online version, of course, as well, but we will then see how much of it, because I think the design process is not for everyone. But someone could be like, oh, I get Sunday School for Atheists, I want to do that. And then if they have access to the design, they have some step-by-step, like, these are the ways that we think you should do it. Consider this. Here's a checklist. Don't forget, whatever, trash bags, a little bit step-by-step. That is not, I don't think it's very difficult. There are some of our things that are too wacky or too like very specific that aren't going to work. And then of course, in certain places, you're just going to do it differently, and that's good. Change the spices around. So,
right.
Most of my answer is we'll see, Marcus. We'll see.
Isn't that a Chinese proverb too? I want to say.
Is it? Okay.
The story of we'll see. Anyway. Yeah.
I want to feed people's head, their heart. Like I want them to have a connection, their bellies, and their feet. Like give them some kind of action. And then often when we're designing it, we want a hands-on thing for them to like do. So it's for everyone's body. But yeah.
I love that. What a beautiful like sensory depiction to give people of like what it should feel like if you walk away from a civic health and engagement.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Works for my brain.
Well, Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and share this incredibly creative work with us. I am really excited to see how people will pick it up and hopefully adopt some of it here in Seattle as well.
Yeah, that'd be rad.
Evan, thank you so very much for the work you're doing. I have friends in Denver, and they definitely applaud you. So,
Oh, cool.
just passing that along. You take care now.
Cool. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, so Nora, I'll say, like, we've had a few artists now on in the last few weeks, and I mean, I think both Evan and I'll say Julie C kind of encapsulate that whole notion, right? That artists can change the world, but I think it's also this is what it looks like in practice doing that, right? In terms of building something that allows people to actually connect and make civics and civic participation, much more accessible to them and also fun, right?
Yeah. I just, I am not a creative person, so I am just,
I
am enthralled. When someone is like, oh, you know what we should do is build like a 2-story Hot Wheels track in an old building to like show people how budgets work. Like, that's incredible. And I love the creativity that has been displayed in this group. And I hope it inspires lots and lots of not just like similar projects, but like wildly different projects, right? I think what they've shown is you can do literally anything and connect it to civic life and engagement.
Yeah, so I don't want to say artists step it up because I know many of you have, but
they carry a lot already, Marcus.
Yeah. But if you have any additional time, please follow Evan's lead in your own city. Anyhow, that said, Nora, shall we get into our 8 ounces of joy for this week?
Yeah, let's do it. Mine is somewhat related, but focused on librarians, not artists.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard, but librarians have been training each other all over the country to host how to resist AI workshops in their communities and teaching like elderly people and young people how to turn off AI on their machines and not have it constantly be infiltrating every thought. And they're also training people about like, how LLMs work, right? And like what kinds of biases they create. It was all started by one librarian who hosted this training in her town and then shared it with librarians all over the country. And I know this is the kind of stuff that librarians do all the time, but it's just such a tribute to the idea of like, find a problem and figure out how you can fix it. Like figure out what you can do about it in your own community and just like build the thing. Just do the thing, and librarians, like artists, probably carry an oversized amount of that labor in our communities, but I'm really grateful for it. It's a really cool project. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that one, Nora. Mine's I guess a little more lowbrow, but I've been recently watching the show Furious. It's on Hulu. It's by Elizabeth Merriweather, who also I believe produced New Girl, the sitcom, and then also
I love that show.
Yeah, same. That said, Furious. What's so great about it is it is this exploration of it is this wonderful exploration of trauma, right? And also how, quite frankly, patriarchy hurts all of us, including men, and how that cycle like ends up destroying us all ultimately. But and I will say, I mean, it's not an easy watch at times. Although Elizabeth Merriweather does, just her style, she's able to sort of inject practical humor even into, heavy subject matter. That said, if, we have any survivors in the audience, it may not necessarily be a show for you at this particular time, but I will say in terms of folks who are attempting to educate themselves, and also sort of be compelled by art and this drama, I think it is a wonderful educational resource, particularly for men who maybe are struggling with how to talk about trauma and patriarchy. It is I just highly recommend it.
That sounds great. I'm going to add it to my queue.
Yeah, it's not always an easy watch, but yeah. And if you want to turn your brain off, probably not the show for you, but but still a very, very great show. That said, shall we go ahead and sign off for today?
Let's do it. Well, folks, even though we would all very much like to plead the fifth, just like Mark Zuckerberg, on how you are doing, we're glad to be here in this small circle of trust where nobody has to pretend any of this is normal. If you'd like to support the show and remove one item from the increasingly elaborate flowchart of things Marcus and I can spiral about, head to inthemeanwhilepodcast.com. Your contributions help keep Life Sucks and Then You Die from becoming our official editorial philosophy. We're currently holding the line at life is frequently horrifying, but have you considered snacks? Which is progress.
It so certainly is, Nora. Enormous thanks to Evan Weissman for reminding us that joy is not the opposite of political seriousness. It might actually be the fuel for it. Tax day carnivals, Hot Wheels tracks, dance parties after elections nobody wanted to celebrate, warm cookies for people tired of being told civic engagement has to feel like homework. Evan asked a much better question. What if building a better world occasionally felt like you actually wanted to live in it?
And a massive thank you to our producer, Jessica Partnow, who takes our weekly stream of consciousness about corporate malfeasance, sailor welfare, lucha libre tax education, and whatever fresh nightmares we've discovered 11 minutes before recording, and somehow creates the illusion that we had a through line. Jessica, there was no through line. You are the through line. We love you.
Yes,
please never leave us.
Do not, please. And huge thanks to Aham Aluo for music so good it briefly tricks you into expecting a calm, emotionally regulated discussion between two adults, and then we start talking. Musical false advertising, really. Yeah.
You can catch In the Meanwhile Wednesdays at 5 on KVRU or wherever you get podcasts while keeping one tab open for the news, one for snacks, and one increasingly serious search for countries where institutions still mostly function.
You've been looking over my shoulder, Nora. Anyway, new episodes drop every Friday. Until then, if everything feels overwhelming, it's because a lot of it is. But you're still here. Keep caring. Keep finding people to care with. Laugh when you can. Make something. Feed somebody. Organize. Dance. Deliver the warm, damn cookies when you can.
The goal isn't to pretend everything is fine. It's to refuse to let everything that isn't fine take everything good from us too. So, until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and we'll see you in the meanwhile.